Pasillo and Joe Resinello.
So as Joe and I always say, the left is teeing it up. Today's no exception.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach. Sunday nights, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, a whole bunch of things live. As you all know, we're across a lot of different platforms right now. Thanks to your support and the assistance of Jonathan Ross at Holy Faith Media up in Canada. Last week's video got over 40,000 views. Now, for a couple of jamokes like us, 40,000 views is a lot, okay? And it shows that, and a lot of people watched, and a lot of people stayed with our conversation, more importantly, because they agree, not just agree, I should say, with what we're saying. I think people respect the fact that Joe and I, just a couple of regular guys, were bold enough to say the truth, all right? And the truth needs to be spoken. And it doesn't matter whether you're going to like it or not like it. And all you good people out there, I think we're reflecting what it is that you have going on around your kitchen table and the conversations you're having. So we would ask you, please. We picked up a lot of followers too last week. So please, if you're watching this on YouTube, whether on the front line with Joe and Joe or Holy Faith Media, please hit the subscribe button on both sites and hit the little bell. If you're following us on Facebook or watching us on Facebook, please share this video with your friends. Please invite your friends to like the front line with Joe and Joe, because we're going to keep it going. Doesn't matter who wins the election, because the election's not over. That's first and foremost to remember. Doesn't matter who won the election. We have a culture that's corrupt. That's why our politics is corrupt. So we could have Donald Trump for the next 50 years. If we don't straighten out our culture, we're doomed as a nation. And that's what we're trying to do here, okay? We're trying to straighten everything out in this country, or help, at least, to straighten everything out. And we do that the way Joe and I, I always say, by speaking the truth and speaking it boldly, okay? So we want to start off. We're going to talk about just a conversation that Joe and I were having, and we're like, well, maybe we should start with this. We have to ask ourselves, because we're supposed to be, most of us are Catholic. Many of us are Catholic who are watching this program. Obviously, Joe and I are too. We have to ask why the Democrats are getting away with a lot of what they're getting away with is because the hierarchy of the church, unfortunately, in America, okay, and we're not bashing them. Again, we're just stating a fact. They're Democrats. They support Democrats. And in the past week, you could understand that. In the past, Joe and I have said a million times in the show, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, you can understand the Catholic being Democrat. I, for the life of me, and I try to be as fair and non-judgmental as I possibly can, for the life of me, I can't understand how any faithful Catholic could support this party. So when we hear things like Papa Francesco is congratulating Joe Biden on his victory, even though the Pope is smart enough to know Joe Biden is not the president yet, and he's not the president-elect yet. Why is Joe Biden being congratulated by the American bishops? Okay, this is something that warrants a conversation, not just tonight. This is just the start of the conversation. We need to let these bishops know in any way we can that a couple of jamokes like us, and the rest of all you good people out there know, that no Christian in good conscience can support this party, because this is a party that literally is the party of death, particularly when it comes to abortion and euthanasia.
But also it's a party that has persecuted religious liberty. I mean, they've made their agenda very clear. I don't know how you could congratulate somebody who wants to hurt you. And they've made that very clear. We've seen that with the Little Sisters of the Poor. We've seen that in their abortion legislation. We've seen that in Clayton versus Bostock, where they're basically trying to redefine genders. This goes against what the Catholic Church teaches. These are intrinsic evils. Now, if you want to basically say nothing, okay, I could live with that. I just don't understand how you can congratulate somebody that's actively fighting against your agenda.
Right.
And they are. And like Joe said, and what Father Altman said, 0 Catholics voted for Joe Biden. 0. Father Altman put it perfectly. And what do I mean by that? Yes, you could be baptized, and yes, you can vote for Joe Biden. But you clearly don't have an understanding of what an intrinsic evil is. You clearly do not take seriously what the church teaches and has taught for hundreds, if not 2,000 years.
Right.
So I do not understand for the life of me, and I have scoured the corners of my heart. I don't understand how bishops can publicly congratulate Joe Biden. I could understand that you could be cordial. I could understand that you could say we'll work together
on certain things.
But I do not know how you can congratulate somebody that wants to hurt you.
Right.
And they do.
And it causes a great deal of scandal. You have Father James Martin, okay? He's out there talking about how a Catholic in good conscience could vote Democrat. I think it was Sister Simone Campbell. If it's not her, I'll apologize. But it was either her. It was one of the nuns on the bus. I'd be safe to say that. Made a video basically making the argument that a Catholic can't vote for Donald Trump. Funny enough, she mentioned a lot of issues, but she didn't mention abortion once. Why? Because she can't. And even she knows in her trying to be slick, because yes, nuns like her try to be slick in their arguments. Even she knows that abortion is the preeminent issue. That's why she didn't mention it. Because just on that issue alone, a Catholic nun is going to say, absolutely not, I can't vote for Joe Biden. You have Cardinal Tobin does a video and says a Catholic in good conscience could vote for Joe Biden, especially considering the alternative. Cardinal Tobin, Donald Trump has been a friend to the Catholic Church. Maybe not to your Catholic Church, and unfortunately we have to speak in that language, because you are the ones who have become political by getting in bed with these people. And yes, you are in bed with the Democrat Party. You get a lot of your money from them. And you think that people like us don't know that. Moreover, you think people like us shouldn't even open our mouth about it. Well, that's not the case. We're going to open our mouth about it. We are disgruntled Catholics. Now, we trust in Jesus Christ. All right, that's first and foremost. Our trust is in Christ, not in you, not in men. Okay, as St. Paul teaches us, Christ is always the center. But you are the shepherd. You are a successor of the apostles. And you are letting us down. You are letting Father James Martin run out there, not just talking about the Democrats, but also talking about a whole host of other heresies, all right, that he's involved with. And you give shelter to Catholic politicians because you get a lot of money from them because of immigration.
That is true, actually. A large part of the U.S. bishop's budget comes from the American government. That is a fact. That actually was reduced during the Trump administration, but during the Obama administration, that is a fact. You could look that up. But going on another tangent with regard to this, quasi support, and maybe not that's too strong of a word, but basically the congratulations from the bishops to Joe Biden and his administration moving forward. It creates confusion.
Yes.
It creates confusion. And there's a lot of confusion amongst American Catholics because sadly, most American Catholics have not been catechized correctly. They have not been. Mm-hmm. They don't know what the church teaches. And obviously, the bishops are the teaching head of the church. And it is their job to basically teach the flock, to guide and to protect the flock. And this type of messaging creates confusion. There are certain things, there are 5 intrinsic evils that are there's no conversation with regard to these issues. Abortion, same-sex marriage, euthanasia, cloning, in vitro fertilization, and I can't think of the other one.
Fetal stem cell research. Basically growing babies to kill them and take their cells.
But bottom line is, these 5 intrinsic evils, this comes from the Bishops' Conference. They're non-negotiables. They're basically, if you ask me, I don't know how you could write that down and then say congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get it. It creates confusion. It creates scandal. And if you ask me, it further wounds the body of Christ in America. And the church right now in America is not that strong.
It's not.
The leadership is weak. We have very few bishops that stand their ground. We have very few bishops that are outspoken. And this is just another confusing message that is being communicated to the flock, and frankly, I think it does harm to the American Catholic Church.
Right.
My opinion.
No, I think your opinion is spot on. And one final point is that how bad does this affect us in terms of evangelization? If I'm expected as a Catholic layman, and Joe's expected as a Catholic layman to try to present the Catholic faith, okay, not just to non-Christians, but to our separated brothers and sisters in the Protestant world, okay, and talk to them about the Catholic Church. How hard is it to evangelize when we don't have a Catholic Church that speaks with one voice, particularly on doctrine? Now, there have been rifts in the Catholic Church over 2,000 years, but this is a particularly bad one because you're talking about doctrinal changes that, let's say, Father Martin is proposing, okay, and even to a degree also Pope Francis, okay, on a number of things. How do you expect us to evangelize? The Protestants must look at us and laugh and say, you people aren't even one. Now, we are. We as Catholics know that we're one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. We know that, okay? But there are men in the church right now, women too, okay, who preach heresy. And that is shown to other people, and they say, well, maybe I was thinking about the Catholic Church, but if they're looking at it just superficially without going beneath the surface, they're going to say, but they're all divided too. So it creates a problem of evangelization. My job, Joe's job, ultimately we want to evangelize the culture. Evangelize the culture for who? For Jesus Christ. Well, how do you do that when you're really being abandoned? You know, we're the sheep being abandoned by the shepherds. And it's not a good situation to be in. It's not a good, but we're going to keep fighting the fight. And I don't think we've been disrespectful tonight. We got to call it the way it is. Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
So my wife and I, we started attending a small chapel that we have to drive to actually. There's good homilies at this particular parish, good priest. So we went there, and the priest got up there today. He was talking in his homily about the Lectio Divina, right, and how to pray it and everything else. And he said, if you want to see a good, you could learn more about this online. Now, this is the priest in the middle of the homily. He says, if you want, you could learn more about this online, and you can put it in Google, and the videos will come up on YouTube. But, he goes, I got to warn you, the very first video on Lectio Divina comes up is one done by Father James Martin. Don't watch that one. He goes, just don't watch that one. Go to some of the others, okay? But yeah, it's important that we need to speak and let the rest of the country know that many of us, not just Joe and Joe, there's many of us out there who are saying, Catholic hierarchy in America, you need to get your head on straight. Not because we want you to be Republican, but we want you to start backing the truth. And the truth is, the Democrat Party cannot be supported because of the intrinsic evils that Joe just mentioned, primarily abortion and euthanasia, both of which are pushed heavily by the party of death. So we're going to go on to and segue into our first conversation. But remember, first of all, that you are watching The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Right now, you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and a whole host of other platforms. Holy Faith Media, most importantly, that's Jonathan Ross up in Canada, who's our producer, who's producing the show right now as we speak. So please, on any platform you're watching us, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us to grow our audience, as you already have helped us to grow our audience. And we're going to go into our first conversation.
Very important. Pennsylvania is the key to Donald Trump's path into the White House for 4 more years. We're going to talk about it. You could thank Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania specifically, and Chief Justice Roberts for Pennsylvania, the mess that we're in right now. We're going to break it down.
Roberts, disgraziad.
If I had the bell, I'd ring it.
All right.
If a state's law, I think this will bridge us into a very good conversation. If a state's law says that absentee ballots need to be received by election day to be counted, federal courts cannot extend this deadline. This not only makes sense, but it's consistent with the U.S. Constitution, which delegates exclusive authority to state legislatures to establish the rules of the road for presidential elections. Judicial interference with election rules creates confusion and undermines the legitimacy of the will of the people as expressed through the state legislature's duly enacted laws. Judge Roberts distinguished himself, and I say that with quotations, from other justices who, when he refused to consider the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's decision to extend the receipt deadline of mail-in ballots. Now, let me repeat this. Basically, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, I'm going to break it down for you in very common terms, extended the receipt of mail-in ballots, which went against the legislature's law. What does that mean? The legislature represents the people of Pennsylvania, which means they vote for them. Judges do not make laws, they enforce them. So they went against the legislature's law, in their mind deeming it just because of COVID.
Which has been their excuse for everything, by the way.
And this was presented to Judge Roberts.
And he punted.
And he said, I won't take the case. And this was presented before the election. So all of this mess in Pennsylvania would not be there if he would have taken the case and done his job. That's why he's on the bench. You're not there to punt. And I've said this time and time again. Judge Roberts is an institutional man. What do I mean by that? He is part of the machine. He is not there to make waves.
He's not rocking a boat.
He is not there. He's proved that on many cases. If you ask me, that's my opinion.
Right.
But I'm entitled to my opinion. But getting back to what he did, he basically should have taken that case. He should have taken that case. And here's another little tidbit. This is, if you ask me, their strongest, the Trump legal team. This is their strongest position in terms of overturning a state.
That's right.
Alan Dershowitz, who's a constitutional expert, who represented Donald Trump during the impeachment process. And if you ask me, if you listen to any of that impeachment trial, it's only 45 minutes worth of time that you should spend, and that's what Dershowitz had to say. He was the youngest tenured Harvard law professor in the history of Harvard Law School. He is a brilliant man, and he is a Democrat. He is a liberal. But he is also a constitutional expert. And he said that if this goes to the Supreme Court and enough votes are at stake, meaning that it should be accepted to the Supreme Court, Donald Trump will win.
Right.
In the Supreme Court. Because of what I just said. The basic and
the law is clear.
That's what, it's very clear.
See, now I'm sure many of you have heard this, but just in case some of you have not, okay, the law is very clear and the Constitution is very clear. Just like when Amy Coney Barrett goes up in her hearings and she says, I'm going to follow the law and I'm going to follow the Constitution. Well, this is a textbook case where the law is enacted by the state legislature, who has the authority under the Constitution of the United States to make those laws as they pertain to elections. So the authority rests in the states with the legislatures, not the state Supreme Court and not the governor. The state legislature in Pennsylvania, they knew about COVID. They had a chance to do something about it, and they decided not to. They said, nope, the ballots have to be in by a certain time, and that's that. The Supreme Court in Pennsylvania turned around and said, no, COVID, because COVID is the thing for everything now. Like Rahm Emanuel said, don't let a good crisis go to waste. They have milked COVID for everything that it's worth, okay? So the Supreme Court turned around. They overrode the will of the elected representatives of the state of Pennsylvania. And then Roberts Disgraziad turned around and said, we won't hear that case. The smart one here, go ahead, Joe Resinello.
John Boy had something like you read in my mind.
Yeah, John Boy, we're just going to say that.
We have to bring in Alito into this now.
Now, Alito's going to be the hero if Trump ends up in the White House. Alito will be the guy who foresaw this.
So what did Alito do? He saw what was going on in Pennsylvania, and he stepped in. And what he said was all of those votes that are coming in after the deadline have to be segregated because they're going to be contested in court.
Right, which means he knew it was coming back.
To the
It's
Supreme
coming back
Court.
to the Supreme Court, and this time they're going to be forced to take the case. They're going to have to take the case. If there will be the people, because I'll tell you what happens if they don't take the case. The state legislature ultimately decides who the electors are. The state legislature can react, okay, and say, no, the will of the people was not followed. The will of this legislature was not followed, and they do not have to. They do not have to honor the
They
so-called.
don't have to certify the electoral votes. The state, and this brings us to a larger conversation. Before we get into that, I want to just say this: if the court does take the case, and if the court basically interjects their opinion, this is what they're deciding. They're not deciding on this election. I want to basically split this legal hair. What they're deciding is whether the Constitution allows courts to set aside duly enacted legislative rules for selecting presidential electors. That authority rests exclusively with the state legislatures.
Repeat that word, Resinello. Exclusively.
With the state legislators. And in our view, must be respected. You see, that's what they're ruling upon.
And that's what Alito knows. And that's why Alito had the foresight to say, we know this is coming back. So you make sure you take those ballots and you set them aside, and they will be tossed out. If you follow the law, let's talk about this for a second. If you follow the law and the Constitution, as Roberts said he would in his hearings, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Alito, Judge Thomas, okay? If you follow, Amy Coney Barrett, if you follow the law and the Constitution, this should be a no-brainer.
I would agree. And here's another thing, and this is what I think the most important point of this whole conversation with regard to Pennsylvania. The Supreme Court should have dealt with this matter weeks before the election.
That's right.
That's why you're there. Listen, you don't take the big boy seat and not make the big boy decision. It doesn't work that way.
So you just described it perfectly. John Roberts is not making the big boy decision.
And that was the mistake. This is a clear case. Here's the thing. If the court felt that this was a situation whereby we had to change the law because of COVID, it's the Supreme Court's decision to make. They should have spoken. They didn't want to because they didn't want to get involved.
Well, Roberts didn't want to get involved.
That is the problem.
Well, they all told us, like I said in their confirmation hearings, what they were going to do. Roberts has shown himself to be somebody mentioned in the chat room. Roberts is a Judas. All right, he stabbed us on the back on numerous occasions. Okay, most recently in Clayton versus Bostock. We're hoping Gorsuch doesn't make that same dumb mistake again. Okay, but it is going to go back to the Supreme Court. And this, no matter what you hear, and this is why, by the way, social media is exploding. This is why what was alternative media, which is probably now going to become mainstream media, because Fox News is taking it on the chin for their biases. All right, during election night, Brett Baer and Sandra Smith and the rest of them. Okay, Newsmax got 2 million downloads in the last couple weeks. I'm one of them. I downloaded Newsmax, OAN, and O'Reilly Station. Now that's just for news. Okay, I'm not looking to them for Catholic teaching. That's just to get news and opinion from people who I don't think have an axe to grind. Okay, and we're going to get the news that we want to hear, because I'm telling you something. I wanted to do a little research for our show to get up to the minute election coverage. You're not finding it when you Google it. You're not finding it when you go and Google. You know what you see? Because you can tell right off the bat. First article's from ABC, next one's from NBC, next one's from MSNBC, next one's from CNN. Right down the line, you got to go 20 articles deep before you can find one article from, let's say, a conservative source. And none of them are talking the way we are right now. They all have Biden as the president-elect. And even by law, not just in terms of sour grapes, by law, he's not the president-elect yet. He is not the president-elect until December 12th.
I'm not even sure the
And,
exact date. Yeah,
you know,
it's early December. He has 4 weeks as of tomorrow to prove his case. 4 weeks, Donald Trump. But also, I want to make this point, just so you know that we're not just ranting about Pennsylvania. As of right now, I believe there are 11 state attorney generals in the United States. I'm going to read you the states. Missouri, Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Texas. They have filed an amicus brief urging the Supreme Court to rule on the Pennsylvania mail-in ballots.
Now, why does that matter? Why would all these attorneys general from other states, why would it matter what they have to say to the Supreme Court when it comes to a case in Pennsylvania? Because this has a national consequence. It involves a state election of the President of the United States. So at the end of the day, what they did in Pennsylvania affects all those other states. That's why they have some kind of standing, and they filed this amicus brief that's going to put pressure on Roberts to have to hear this case. And when they hear it and they follow the law and the Constitution, those ballots are getting thrown out, and Donald Trump's going to take Pennsylvania. And you know who's going to be shaking in their collective boots? Kamala and her sidekick, Joe Biden.
This is, if you ask me from the court's perspective, the state to watch. Because I think they have the strongest constitutional case. I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. I think they have the strongest constitutional case in Pennsylvania. Not just because I say so, Alan Dershowitz says so, and so do these 11 attorney generals. 11 have spoken out. So I do think we have a good shot in Pennsylvania. As far as the other irregularities, I think he has every right and should have them go due course with regard to the courts. We have to look into this system situation, these glitches, quote unquote glitches. I think that is a very valid conversation that is going to be adjudicated. We have to look at why Republicans were not permitted to validate the ballots. The law says that both a Democrat and a Republican have to be present. That's the law. They did not follow the law. That was very clear.
No, they blatantly violated the law.
So that has to be adjudicated. There are a lot of irregularities. Why did the voting stop in the middle of the night? Why? It did. It's never happened before. These things have to be addressed by the courts. We have 4 weeks for them to be addressed. Now, I want to bring up something else. In 4 weeks, the states are going to certify the election. They're going to award electoral votes. The Electoral College will meet and they will reward, each state will reward the president with their votes. Say there is not a majority, an undisputed majority, meaning there's still uncertainty. Remember, these 6 states, swing states, it's a margin. Some cases it's less than 1%.
Right.
Okay, so now you basically insert some of this doubt. Why did the voting? This is what the lawyers are going to do. They're going to say, why did the voting stop in the middle of the night? Why did this system
set a water main break? I think in Georgia they had a water main break. That's like on the waterfront where the guy says, "Well, what happened to the files?" "Well, we had a fire last night and the files got all burned up." Well, yeah, right, because you set the fire. So I don't doubt there was a water main break. But you want to know something? It was probably a Democrat that caused it. We think we're all stupid. Joe and I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. We saw Democrat machine politics firsthand growing up. Where the Italian guys were paying $5 to the black guys and say, "Listen, go in there, go vote. Make sure you go vote Democrat." We saw this growing up, saw it firsthand. What are you talking about? Water main breaks, really?
But what the lawyers are going to do is put forth this evidence or even doubt, because remember, it has to be undisputed majority. Say that is not reached, and they cannot come to a conclusion because it is disputed and there is doubt. It's like when you go to a murder trial. It has to be beyond the reasonable doubt that you can convict, right? So, say there is doubt, and the states don't certify. Say Arizona doesn't certify. Say Nevada doesn't certify. Say Wisconsin doesn't certify. What happens? It goes to the Congress under the 12th Amendment.
Uh-oh.
Joe and I recently posted something on our social media platform, on our Facebook page. You could look at it. It's a 7-minute video. Thank you, Vinny Spinella, for passing it on to us. He's a very good friend of ours. It explains it very well. What happens is then the Congress decides who the president is. Immediately in your head, you think to yourself, uh-oh, we don't control the Congress. Well, it doesn't work through the individual representatives in the Congress. It works per state. Each state has one vote.
One.
And the Republicans have the majority. So, as a strategy, a legal strategy, what the Trump legal team may be trying to do is to sow this doubt into the Electoral College by saying, listen, there are irregularities here. While I cannot say with certainty that those irregularities could have swung a concrete number of votes, what I can say is they did take place, and they're leaving doubt to the outcome of the election. See, if I was the lawyer, that's how I would present it. There is doubt. So therefore, you cannot certify. And what happens? The Constitution has a venue for that. It's called the 12th Amendment. And in that 12th Amendment, Donald Trump has the advantage. That's the nuclear option. That is something else you have to be watching for.
And that's why he's not giving up. You see, all of this is constitutional. This is all part of the process. This is not, now it might be a little bit anomalous because it doesn't happen all the time, but nonetheless, it is built into the Constitution. That's why the 12th Amendment is there, okay, for situations like this. And this is a bad situation. It's going to get pretty hairy over the next 4 weeks. Donald Trump is completely within his rights to stand his ground. And remember something, Hillary Clinton told Joe Biden, do not concede this election under any circumstances. Why? Because she knows the law too. She knows the law too. What they hate more than anything else, Donald Trump is beating them at their game. Do you think, all you good people out there, I want to give a quick shout out, new viewer, Louis. How you doing, Louis? That's my cousin, by the way, but I promised him a shout out. Do you think for a second you want to answer the question, oh, but the Democrats wouldn't do this? Really? What about Al Gore? Was Al Gore within his rights in 2000? Joe and I are fair people. We would say absolutely. Al Gore was within his rights in 2000 to explore all legal means possible to see if he could get a favorable outcome in the state of Florida in the election. That's completely legitimate. When it went finally back down to the state and the Supreme Court ruled that they were going to let the state decide, okay, Al Gore graciously, and I don't like Al Gore at all, graciously called George Bush and conceded. Okay, he originally conceded, took it back, and then after all this happened. But Al Gore was completely within his rights. So why do we think in our minds that if Biden lost, which he did, by the way, he lost on election night with legal votes, he lost and he knows it, okay? Why do we think that he wouldn't do the same thing? Why do we think the Democrats wouldn't be doing the same thing with batteries of lawyers, okay? Why? Of course they would. These people are vicious. And one of the reasons why I bring this up is, why do you think they hate the Orange Man so much? Because he beat them to the punch. You see, he's been beating them for 4 years. They can't take it. He's beating them right now. Do not listen to the mainstream media. Do not refer to Joe Biden as President-elect Biden, because he is not. And this election is far from over. Don't listen to what they're saying. My wife says to me, Trump's going to concede. I said, where did you get that from? She goes, well, it just came across the Daily Mail. I said, right, exactly. Look at the source. If you see something from NBC, throw it out. They're trying to condition you that Donald Trump lost. And he did not. And more importantly, it's not because Joe and I say it, because they know it. They know Donald Trump won. That's why somebody commented in the chat room, why'd they stop the voting in the middle of the night? Because they needed to find out how many votes they had to make up, and they were surprised at how many they had to make up, because he was killing them in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Pennsylvania. He was crushing them.
And that's what the lawyers will look into. And this is the beauty of our Constitution, and this is why it should be filled, and this is why we should have Supreme Court justices that basically observe the law as it's written. Originalists. Ideally, we would want natural law jurists. This is why it allows this time from election day to the inauguration date for this type of situation. By the way, it's happened 2 times in the history of America where a president who was basically running, a presidential candidate, did not concede. This will be the 3rd time. So this is not the only time in history.
Right.
So it's happened. The Constitution has a process for this to go through. We have to just sit and watch what happens. And ideally, I hope we don't have to go the 12th Amendment route. Ideally, what I would like to see is, this is just me speaking, that this system proves itself to be faulty. Donald Trump wins the election. Then we have to pray for peace. And this is going to what Joe just said. Joe Biden was coronated, and I think it's a good lead into what we're talking about next. We're talking about the Democrats' call to unity.
But real quick, let's give a quick, just to let you know, and everybody watching out there, you're watching The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. We are way into the breach. When we go live on 8 o'clock, I used to say Facebook Live, but it's beyond that now because of our dear producer at Holy Faith Media, Jonathan Ross. Right now we're across Facebook and YouTube at The Frontline with Joe and Joe, but also on Holy Faith Media and a whole host of other platforms. So we thank him. We have about 100, a little over 150 watching right now. We got a bunch of people in the chat room. So please feel free to chat. If we can get the response, to respond to some of those, we will. Please remember to try the 30-day free trial subscription to the Crusade channel, crusadechannel.com, okay? You could go there, you could listen to Mike Church, you could listen to Joe and Joe, Rick Barrett, and a whole host of great shows, okay? Because that's the way we have to go. We need to get rid of Fox News. I used to defend them, Joe. I don't defend them anymore. Now I've gotten rid of them, okay? We have to go the route of those people we know who we think the same with, and we need to watch what they're saying. Newsmax and the rest that I mentioned earlier. Mike Church at the Crusade Channel has a show that's right up all of our alley. Okay? Catholic, straight shooter, very entertaining, and we would encourage you to listen to Joe and Joe there. We have a 3-hour show on Mondays. crusadechannel.com. It's the last live radio station standing. So please go there, and please on social media, like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Joe Resinello, where are we headed next?
As I said, the Democrats are calling for unity. You see, I look at it as this way. They're calling for us to submit. Their idea of unity is you will comply. That's not unity. And we talked about this last week. You do not unite around a lie. You cannot unite around a lie. It doesn't work that way. But here's the interesting thing. Last week, obviously, a lot of Trump supporters, we heard this unwelcome news. This came from what I like to call, it was a coronation by the media of Joe Biden. It was irresponsible, if you ask me. It was irresponsible because there were still many questions that need answers. These questions are going to be adjudicated by the courts. This is not cut and dry, but they're trying to make it so. We just listed a bunch of irregularities. They're irregular, and that's why you have courts. You have a third party. This was irresponsible. Why was it irresponsible? Because it's going to create violence. You do realize that if Donald Trump is declared the victor, all hell is going to break loose. And whose fault it is? It's the media and the DNC, because they tried to brainwash you. They tried to brainwash you in saying just what his wife said. Donald Trump's going to concede. They're trying to force his hand. They're trying to convince the public before the election is certified that Joe Biden has won. There are still many questions.
That's right.
But if you noticed last Saturday, not one riot. There were many Republicans. We were very upset, obviously. I was upset. I was doing the lawn outside talking to my neighbor. I was like, what the heck is going on?
I had to go to confession for what I screamed at the television.
But here's the thing. Not only was it irresponsible, but did you notice that the Trump supporters, not one riot.
Not one
person hurt a soul.
Not one fire.
Did you see yesterday? Obviously, it's not on mainstream media, but you should look in Twitter. Did you see the violence that took place yesterday at the? I heard an estimate of 2.4 million people were in D.C. yesterday supporting Donald Trump. Stop the Steal rally. Did you see the violence? In one situation, they were throwing explosives and fireworks into a lobby of a hotel, beating people up, harassing
This
old
is the
people.
left.
Of course.
In other words, these were the Antifa
And Black Lives Matter. This was yesterday. Look at Twitter, Andy Ngo's site specifically on Twitter. Look at all the footage. You see, and he still has the advantage, Joe Biden, currently, and you saw that. You see, this is the responsibility of the DNC to call it out. Notice not one word was said. The media did not cover it. And you look at people like us. We heard this news last week, right? We went on with our lives. Donald Trump isn't my God. I went on with my life, taking care of my family, working, going about life. Why is it that it is the Democrats, the leftists, that cannot handle this? They're the ones that they basically say they're the tolerant ones, right? They call us fascists.
Right.
That's just projection. You're the ones who are intolerant. We didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
Look what you did yesterday.
But they're the ones calling for unity.
And that's why we bring this word up. This has nothing to do with unity. It has everything to do with submission.
This is a joke. This idea of unity is a joke. Okay? Let's give a Catholic example. You want to unify the country? You want to bring people together, Joe Biden? Leave the Little Sisters of the Poor alone. Supreme Court has ruled twice that the Little Sisters of the Poor do not have to provide abortifacients and contraceptive in their health care programs, in their health care packages. Why don't you start there? If you want to bring Catholics together, leave the Little Sisters of the Poor alone. Denounce Jake Tapper, okay, and the rest of the horrid crew in the media when they try to paint us as fascist and racists. You denounce them. Now, I'm never going to join you because you're pro-abortion, you're pro-death. Okay, and other things, okay? But I'll be cordial. But as long as you're not denouncing them and you're calling for this fake unity, then no, I'm not gonna be cordial at all. I'll never call you President of the United States. I will never. Obama was the President of the United States. You want to know why? Because Obama got legitimately elected. I didn't like it. Joe didn't like it. We know you didn't like it. I referred to him as President Obama because he was. I will never refer to Joe Biden as president. And when they call for this fake unity, even more so. Okay, and again, I'll say it one more time. You want to start unifying the country? Leave the Little Sisters of the Poor alone. But this whole idea of unity is a joke. Because they're the ones who did it to Donald Trump. They did not accept the election from 2016. They have been the ones dividing this country for the last 4 years. Hillary Clinton in her campaign divided the country into, remember, all the good people and the basket of deplorables. Okay? Who are the dividers? Keith Olbermann, we covered a couple weeks ago, called us parasites. He called Amy Coney Barrett a parasite. Jake Tapper, they said, but what did he say recently?
Well, he basically said if your behavior doesn't change, he was basically insinuating that your employer should take note of it.
Right, which means he and people like him are going to notify your employer to say that your employer should fire you because you don't have the temperament to be a good American and a good employee because you supported Donald Trump. So you got Olbermann calling us parasites. You got all these examples. You got Rashida Tlaib. Why does anybody forget? When's the last time in your lifetime, in public, by a public official, you heard them say, let's go to Washington and impeach the MFer? I never heard anybody refer to Clinton as that. Not in the media. I never heard another politician refer to him as an MFer. Or Obama. What's the worst with Obama? A congressman called him a liar because he did lie. Okay, at a State of the Union address. But this is what we're dealing with. And Biden's going to call for unity? Joe Biden is going to be... You haven't denounced Antifa. You know that they're the violent ones. We're not telling you they are.
He basically said they're a figment of our imagination.
He said they're an idea. He said they're an idea like Jerry Nadler said they're a myth. No, they're not. When you get hit over the baseball bat by one of them, you know that they're not a myth. And they're not an idea. See, an aluminum bat is not an idea. It hurts and it could kill you. You're going to deny. You're going to condemn Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a communist organization. They've said so.
And many black people on the political scene have said so as well.
Right. So you want to unify, and this is what you want to unify, right? Your idea of unity again, one more time from Joe and Joe, is an effing joke. Okay? You don't want to unify anything. Nothing.
Unity is a word, and you have to basically, it's actions that speak. And like I said, you can't unify on a lie. This has to be confronted peacefully, but it has to be confronted with the truth and in the courts, and let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. But I want to move on to a statement that Franklin Graham basically had.
I want to say one thing, okay, because I thought it was a really good way of summing up, if it's okay, and then Jonathan will move on to our next topic. But this is important. Kylie Zempel in The Federalist, she summed this up really good when you talk about unity. She said to Democrats, as Joe mentioned earlier, to Democrats, unity means doing everything that they want and shutting up about it. She said the only thing worse than listening to a screaming toddler is seeing his smug, tear-stained but smiling face after his parents give in to his irreverent outburst and rewards him for his tantrum. That's all I could think about as I walked the streets of Madison, Wisconsin, Saturday night after several news outlets called the presidential race for Joe Biden. The snotty toddler got his way. That's perfect. That defines them. They have created all this division in this country. They've created all this violence. They've attacked you and your president for the last 4 years like a bunch of snotty little toddlers. And now because the media has declared Joe Biden president, the snotty toddler, at least to them, it seems like they've gotten their way. Not for long. Not for long. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're angry and we're way into the breach. Okay? So we're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. We got a lot of people right now in the chat room. And we've got about 170 or so watching. Joe Resinello, where are we headed next?
Franklin Graham weighed into this basic situation. He said, our nation is under attack from within. Clearly it is. This is what he had to say. He said, the hard-won freedoms that we have enjoyed in America are very much at stake. Graham stated he fears an attack on Christian businesses like we saw during the Obama administration if former Vice President Biden wins the election. I'm going to give you a quote and then we want to break it down. Please keep this in mind. It was Franklin Graham's organization during the middle of the COVID crisis in New York City. It could have been in like the spring sometime. They threw him out of the city because of his position on same-sex marriage. He was helping people, and they were not interested in his help. And he's basically opining on that indirectly, but then I want to break it down from a larger perspective. This is what he had to say. He said, I think we will see these kind of attacks from the left against Christian businesses, Christian organizations, and that will happen. I think they will try to come after our churches, attack exempt organizations doing humanitarian work, social work throughout the country. Some of the best work in the country are the nonprofits that are working in the inner cities and throughout the country, trying to help relieve some of the problems we have in society. And they'll want to tax them and try to close them down. Do you think for a second, don't think for a second that they don't want to tax the Catholic Church. Don't think for a second that they're going to basically say, and it's coming to a theater near you soon, don't think it's not. If you are not for same-sex marriage, by the way, this is a pervasive idea that marriage is between a man and a woman globally. Jews believe it, Muslims believe it, Christians believe it. Across the globe, you're talking about billions upon billions of people. Don't think for a second that coming to a theater near you very soon, if you do not acknowledge that marriage can be open to two men or to two women, that will be like saying the N-word. It is going to be equal to being in the KKK.
Right.
It will be declared hate speech. And you will not be able to say that publicly, even though your religion teaches you that. And the religions of the world. That's coming to a theater near you. And this is where I, as a Catholic, say to myself, who believes that marriage is between a man and a woman? I believe in traditional marriage. I'll go to my grave saying it, and I will never renounce that. I'm sorry, it's renouncing my Catholic faith to say otherwise. And this is where I have problems with Catholics that voted for Joe Biden. Because the church does not stand for that. It never did and it never will.
No matter what James Martin says.
And that's a confusing voice, and that's another conversation for another day. But what I'm saying is crystal clear, and it's true, my friends. I'm not lying to you. So, how can you congratulate a man who is going to lead a political movement in that direction? And they're going in that direction. It's as clear as day.
Right.
It's as clear as day. And this is where I say to myself, bishops, good bishops, what are you doing? What are you doing? How do you congratulate a wolf?
And well, how if you're a bishop, don't you see the handwriting on the wall? They're coming after us, shepherds. Well, what are we doing? We're just defending Catholic teaching.
That's it.
That's all we're doing. And you're not going to come to our aid. What happens, Cardinal Dolan? Let's get personal. What happens, Cardinal Dolan? I don't live in your archdiocese. I live in the other archdiocese across the river, the Archdiocese of Newark, okay, run by your brother over there, Cardinal Tobin. But I work in the Archdiocese of New York. What are you going to do to defend me? Because everybody knows where I work, what my religion is. Everybody knows I believe in everything my religion stands for, which is the Catholic religion. What are you going to do if they fire me, Cardinal Dolan? Unjustly. Because I don't agree with them. Because I won't adapt myself to their revolution. What are you going to do? Are you going to put pressure on Catholics on the Supreme Court? You're going to put pressure on so-called Catholic politicians like Andrew Cuomo to give me my job back? Are you going to defend me as a character witness in court when I sue the balls off them for firing me for this? You're supposed to be doing this for us. You're supposed to be assisting us in this and protecting us. You have the staff. We're the sheep. You have the staff. You're the one who's supposed to beat away the wolves. Unfortunately, you and your organization have become the wolves. And I say that because you don't defend us in these matters. And like Joe said, they're already upon us. And it's only going to get worse if Biden prevails in this fight. It's only going to get worse. And I'm not looking to the Supreme Court to protect me here, even though I do want them to. Okay, I'm not looking to leaders in the Congress to protect me in this, even though I want them to. But I expect you to be loud and upfront in this culture saying, absolutely not. This is what the Catholic Church teaches. This man cannot lose his job. And you put pressure on Catholic politicians to make sure that doesn't happen to us. Are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to do that?
I got news for you. This is again why I say to myself, how can you congratulate Joe Biden? They're going to try to tax you. They're going to come and take your property. That's the end game. That's the end game. And then you congratulate them? No.
Can't happen.
I say to myself, what is going on? What is going on? One thing about Jesus Christ, I've said this time and time and time again, I'm going to say it again. He was crystal clear. The Catholic Church is painting by numbers. It is. It's almost like the Constitution in a sense with regard to doctrine. It's all written down. Marriage is between one man and one woman for life. It's biblical. It's biblical. Not even the Pope can change that.
Nope.
Because it came from Christ's mouth. You cannot be a Christian and be for same-sex marriage because it's biblical. It's biblical.
Mm-hmm. You know,
and this is, again, this is where I say to myself, listen, that doesn't mean I don't love people who are involved in same-sex relationships. I respect them. I love them as people. I'm kind to them. I'll speak to them. I'll even be your friend. But I will not acknowledge the relationship as a valid marriage. Why? Because I'm Catholic. Nor will a Jew, a practicing Jew. We interviewed Rabbi Levin. You could look at our interview with him. He had some very, very strong words about that too.
Strong.
Marriage is sacred, someone just put in the chat room.
Right.
It's the bedrock of our society. And why does the church hold this position? Because if you legitimize same-sex marriage, you delegitimize marriage between a man and a woman.
Which is God's plan for the family.
Because they produce children. And that is the bedrock of society.
Mm-hmm.
It's the bedrock of society. If you delegitimize marriage between a man and a woman, you hurt society. That's why the church does not acknowledge civil marriage between a man and a woman and a woman. Because in doing so, it legitimizes the relationship on par with marriage between one man and one woman. And that's the thinking behind why the church does that.
Right.
Because that is the foundational block of society. And in hurting the foundation, you destroy the society.
That's right. But when you're talking about Marxists, we know that that's their goal. We don't guess that that's their goal. They've been wanting to tear down society, particularly American society, for a very long time. They destroyed the societies where their ideology has taken hold. Whether those societies were Russia, under the czars, they tore that all down. Okay, China, they tore down Chinese civilization, and then they imposed their own will. So we know what their end game is. Their end game is the destruction of America. Ultimately, we know the Marxist end game. They have their target squarely on the back of the Catholic Church. We don't care what anybody else's opinion is. They have numerous targets. Their primary target is the Catholic Church. Okay, so let's be clear about that. I wanted to bring back one point, though. I forgot if it was Alito or Gorsuch who basically said that the Bostock decision basically opens up questions, I'm paraphrasing, opens up questions of religious liberty that we know are going to be brought to the court and we are going to have to rule upon in the future. I think it was Alito said that, but I could be wrong. It was either Gorsuch or Alito. Point being is they know that religious freedom is under attack. Religious liberty is under attack. Your conscience rights are under attack. As Joe said, you don't have any conscience rights when it comes to the Marxist. You will simply obey, as we said in our last segment. You're either going to do what we say and shut up and you're going to obey, or we're going to destroy you. So all of this is going to come to full bad flower over the next few months, particularly if Biden prevails in this, okay? And we need to be on guard about this. Somebody said, many people have said in the chat room, pray every day.
Pray the rosary.
Pray the rosary every single day, okay? Because let me tell you something. Again, Jesus Christ is in control, and he may, for our greater good, allow a little pain and suffering. He may allow a lot of pain and suffering. And we need to pray that we know how to fight this fight and see our way through it by relying on him, okay? I'm not going to question Jesus, and I'm not going to question his will. What I am saying is you can see the handwriting on the wall. These people are vicious. They're coming after you. They want to change the way you live your life and what you believe, and we need to be on guard, and we need to do what Joe and I are doing, and a lot of good people out there. Start bringing the battle to them. When they say you don't believe in gay marriage, I don't believe in any marriage outside of a man and a woman. None. As Joe always says, I don't even believe in civil marriage.
I don't believe in civil marriage. Because marriage is a sacrament.
It's sacrament. So no, I don't believe. So, well, what about two men? What part of what I said don't you understand? One man, one woman. Forever. Children. Okay? One man, one woman. So you can't pigeonhole me into saying I hate gay people because I'm against same-sex marriage. I'm against all other relationships recognized by the law. Outside of one man and one woman. Again, we need to start taking the battle to them. We can't let them change the language that we use. Stop using the word abortion. Now, we use it because everybody knows what we're talking about, okay? But the bottom line is we need to stop using the word abortion. Baby killing is more appropriate. That's what Father Imperato calls it. He calls it state-sanctioned, state-funded baby killing, okay? Why aren't we taking back the language? We need to start doing these things and put them back on our heels because they have us against the ropes and they think that they have us beaten. And they don't. We know that they don't. But we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared.
And everything Joe said regarding marriage is Catholic doctrine. Don't be confused by the wolves. It's Catholic doctrine. You can go read it. Read it in the catechism. You see, the beautiful thing about the internet, there's a lot of negative things about the internet, but one of the beautiful things about the internet, you could research things, you could read what I'm saying, you could validate my facts. Marriage is between one man and one woman. That is a Catholic, it's a bedrock Catholic teaching. And this is where I have problems with Christians and Catholics, and I'm not talking problems like I want to hurt you, but I am confused, or I don't understand how you could support a candidate that goes against your faith, because what it says to me is this: your faith is not the primary driver of your life. You see, Christ said, love God above all things and love your neighbor as yourself, right? Loving God above all things is to take his word at his surface. St. John, in his gospel, he said this: if you love me, you will do what I tell you. John said that. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's what John said, the beloved disciple. To believe in Christ is to follow Christ, is to listen to his words. What did his mother say? Listen to him.
Do what he tells you.
So this is what it means to be a Christian. Okay? And when you compartmentalize your vote, what you're saying is these things are more important than that. That's what you're saying, whether you realize it or not, by your actions. Your actions are saying that. And I find that to be troubling, because Joe Biden is not going to save your soul. Jesus is. When you die, it's not what you say, it's how you lived. It's what you did. That's the truth.
That is.
So what I'm saying is we can't basically compartmentalize our lives. Sadly, too many people, that's how they vote. And that's not how it's going to work when you go to heaven or you stand before God. And maybe you don't go to heaven. Maybe I don't go to heaven. You see, this is what I mean. You see, this is what's going on. It's clear that God hasn't taken the front seat in America. It's clear that the focus is no longer spiritual, it's material. It's very clear.
And that goes for communism and capitalism. It's all material, right? But that's a whole other conversation. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. I do want to mention something political. Louis in the chat room said, we need the Senate or else we're lost. I was telling Joe before the show, remember something, even if in the selection, remember what we might get. We might get a Biden in the Oval Office. We might have a weakened Pelosi, but she's still in control of the House. And the Senate split 50-50 with Kamala being the tiebreaker, okay? If that happens, they will try to ram through the most radical legislation, and we're going to have to survive that for 2 years. Just like Obama did with Obamacare, that was wildly unpopular. He got it through against the will of the American people, and 2 years later, the Republicans swept in 2010. We'd have to weather the storm for 2 years. Politically, it's going to be a pretty bad storm, but nonetheless, in 2022, the Republicans are in a much better position in the Senate, and the Democrats would definitely lose the House. So I say that to say, let's not get all doom and gloom about the election. We want a good outcome. Joe and I pray for it every day. I know you people do. We're praying for this. We're praying for Trump to stay in office. We're praying for the Senate to get one more Republican. And then we move on like we did for the last 4 years and let Donald Trump piss off the left and the mainstream media for another 4 years. That's what we're praying for. But remember something. What is Joe talking about tonight? Joe's kind of taking the floor a little bit tonight, but I want to let him go because he's talking about things that are much more important than politics. Even though the politics are important, what are we doing spiritually? How are we preparing ourselves to fight the real battle, which is the culture war, which is a spiritual battle? When you're fighting against pornography, when you're fighting against all the perversion being taught to your children in the public schools, when you're fighting against all that, that's a spiritual battle, brothers and sisters. That's not a political battle. We need to evangelize the culture. Don't worry, the politics will follow. We've said that for 2 years, okay? The politics will follow. The culture comes first. Let's keep praying, but we have to have personal holiness. We're all imperfect and we're all sinners, but we have to have personal holiness. We need to pray, stay close to the sacraments, stay close to Christ, and get out there and fight this battle. And most importantly, do what Christ said, which is be not afraid. Be not afraid. Okay? That's what we're doing here. That's what we're asking you to do. That's what the movement we're trying to start, is that we need to take back the culture. We do it, we do it 1 inch at a time, just like the left does. And then we can win, and then the politics will follow. So just keep that in mind, okay? Keep that in mind, that this is a spiritual battle. Somebody mentioned earlier in the chat room about the serenity prayer. It's so funny you mentioned that. My spiritual director that I go to, me and my wife, we went yesterday, gave me a copy of the original serenity prayer. Anybody out there should look it up. It's a little bit of an extended version of the serenity prayer, and it's got a little bit of different language, but it focuses on the grace, okay? The grace that we need. That's what we need to fight more than anything else. If you want serenity, you need grace. And that's what we really need. We need to be in a state of grace to fight this battle, okay? So let's get that straight. No matter how badly we want the politics to go our way in the short term, ultimately we win this battle on the spiritual level. So you're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We have one more story we want to talk about because it talks about someone who is standing up, by the way. Someone who is a national leader and a national government that's standing up against the, what do you want to call it, the LGBT juggernaut that's out there. But remember to follow us on Facebook and YouTube at The Frontline with Joe and Joe. Like, subscribe, share on YouTube. Subscribe and hit the little bell. This way you get all of our videos. And having said that, Joe Resinello, where are we headed?
We're going to broaden the conversation a little bit, and we're going to go to a global topic, and we're going to go to Hungary. Because recently, Hungary's government proposed a constitutional amendment that basically would defend children's sexual integrity while limiting adoption to married couples.
Catch that?
Do you actually believe that that has to be said? That has to be a constitutional amendment? But sadly, it does. This is what it had to say. In direct opposition to gender theory, the amendment text states that Hungary protects children's right to an identity conforming to their birth gender. Do you actually believe that that has to be documented? This is where we've come as a society.
Well, evidently now we do have to do that. I mean, that's a position where, but at least they're doing it, Joe.
Absolutely. It ensures education in accordance with the values based on Hungarians' constitutional identity and Christian culture.
Wait, when Joe sent me this, I wanted to focus on that, and then I'll shut up. Remember what Joe just said. In accordance with the values based on Hungary's constitutional identity and Christian culture. Get it? You see, the Hungarians obviously get it, and they're not afraid to say this amendment represents our Christian culture. Says it unapologetically. Continue, Mr. Resinello.
Hungarian law recognizes marriage as a stable union between one man and one woman. And the basis for family relations is marriage. That's what the document says. And it states the mother is a woman and the father is a man.
That's so radical.
Are you crazy?
That's so radical,
And here's the interesting part about it. Amnesty International. This is when you talk about globalism. Amnesty International said that this nation is basically going to the dark ages by making such a common sense statement.
Let's break it down. Let's break it down. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to do this story, and focusing on what Amnesty International had to say. All you good people out there in the chat room, let us know what you think. Here's the deal, okay? When anybody talks to you about the bad old days of the Dark Ages, okay? When they try to tell you that they don't want to go back to those bad Catholic days of the Middle Ages, remember something. The Dark Ages preceded Christianity. The Dark Ages did not occur during Christianity. That is an anti-Christian title that the modernists and the atheists have labeled the Middle Ages and the reign of Catholic Europe. Okay? Catholic Europe is the light, not the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages were pagan times, pre-Christian times. Romans, Greeks, homosexuality, babies being exposed at the side of the river, which is tantamount to abortion, except the babies are born, but the parents kill them anyway. Sacrificing their babies to Moloch, okay? Burning them in Moloch's furnace belly, okay? That's the Dark Ages. Christianity is the light. Let's get that straight. When Amnesty International wants to go back to the Dark Ages or accuses you, a country like Hungary, of wanting to go back to the Dark Ages, they're going back to, they don't want Hungary to return to the light, you see. That's the main thing. Because what is all this that we're living through now? Is this something new? Abortion, homosexuality, perversion, pornography, all of it. The whole sewer. This is new? No, this is very old. It's called paganism. That's what pagans used to do. Christian culture changed that. All right? So when Amnesty International says that they don't want to go back to the Dark Ages, no, absolutely they do. Okay? But it's not the Dark Ages they're describing. It's the Dark Ages under pagan Rome and pagan Greece and other pagan cultures. That's what they want. So I'm getting tired of Christian civilization, authentic Christian civilization, being called the Dark Ages. Don't allow them to say that. All the things that you're benefited from came from that very same time that they called the Dark Ages, including science, by the way, which was given to European civilization, given to Western civilization by the Catholic Church. So let's be clear about who represents the Dark Ages, as Archbishop Vigano said. There's children of light, there's children of darkness. Amnesty International, they are amongst the children of darkness. Because if they can't see that these children in Hungary are being protected by the government from the abuse that's coming from the LGBT rainbow mob, all right, then that means that they're in bed with them, figuratively.
So why do we bring this up? Because this agenda is also here in America. Joe Biden in his town hall basically affirmed a woman who said that her 8-year-old daughter was transitioning into a boy. He affirmed her in her decision. That is irresponsible, if you ask me, because science says so, because psychologists say so, the American Pediatric Association says so. It's irresponsible. Bostock versus Clayton, a law which was recently upheld by the Supreme Court, is going to introduce this very concretely into our society. It's here. It's here. And it's wrong. And this is again why I say, how could the bishops congratulate an administration that supports this type of behavior? How can Christians vote for an administration that affirm this type of behavior? Because they are. And it's not just their kids anymore. Every public school in America is doing just that.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone, from the rich ones to the poor ones, all run by the biggest union in America, which is the Teachers
Union. Yep.
I'm just telling you the truth, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And the thing that I find interesting is this: sometimes you'll talk to people who voted for the Democrats, and they'll agree with what I just said. Oh, I'm completely against that. That's completely horrible. Who'd you vote for?
Biden.
I voted for Joe Biden.
Right.
And then I said, I walk away confused.
Right.
What is your priority?
Right. And what are you happy about? Somebody in the chat room saying they're happy Joe Biden, it looks like he's going to win. What are you happy about? If you're Catholic, I don't know, maybe you're a troll. I don't know. But what exactly are you happy about? That babies now could be killed while they're being born? That if the mother at that moment, decides I don't want this baby anymore and the baby's about to come out, the so-called doctor could kill that baby? Because Joe Biden supports that. Kamala, she supports that. She got a 100% rating from Planned Parenthood and NARA. All right? What are you happy about? Marriage getting redefined and destroyed. We're going to have E. Michael Jones on our Crusade Channel show tomorrow. All right? Talks all about this. Okay? We're going to have him on talk about sexual liberation and political control. In other words, the swamp that is our culture. We'll be talking all about this. What are you happy about with Joe Biden as president? Yes, they are. They're the Demonrats. Okay? Or the Demon Rats, whatever you want to call them. With them in control? What could you possibly, if you're a Christian, what could you possibly, that the poor are going to get fed? Is that going to be your thing? Well, the poor get fed. Oh, the babies won't get separated from their mothers at the border. Really? You're going to compare that to child slaughter? Are you? So I don't know. I don't know. I pray for you. I'm not saying this because Donald Trump's the savior. We say that constantly because we want people to know that at the front line with Joe and Joe. Donald Trump is not our savior. Jesus Christ is. Okay? But in the temporal realm, he is obviously the better choice for a Christian than Joe Biden.
And if Jesus Christ is your savior, you would agree with what we just said because it's a teaching of the Catholic Church. It's a teaching. These are not my opinions. Mm-hmm. These are teachings, bedrock teachings for centuries. You either live your life according to the world or according to God. And it's your actions, i.e. how you vote, that dictate that.
And you can't serve two masters.
Another biblical statement.
Can't serve two. I don't serve Donald Trump. I don't serve the conservative movement. I don't serve the Republican Party. I don't serve America. Okay, I serve God. Okay, like the Baltimore Catechism says, right? To know God, to love God, to serve God, and to live with God forever. That is who we serve. Okay, we have to live this life. We are in the world and we're not of the world. We will make our positions known and we will vote because we're obligated to do that too. But remember something, they on the left, they have created a new religion. And it's a religion, as we said earlier. You will listen to that religion, which is very dogmatic and very doctrinaire. The thing that they say they hate, by the way. The thing they always criticize the Catholic Church for, by the way. You're too dogmatic. You're too doctrinaire. You do the same thing. Nobody's going to stray from your dogma. Okay? Nobody. Okay? Because you'll drop the hammer on them. So the very thing you accuse the Catholic Church of, you do yourself, but you do it a lot more. Okay? So you can't stray from them. You need to bend your knee. And this is biblical too. This goes back thousands of years to the persecution of the Jews. I always forget the characters' names in the story. When the king killed the 7 brothers because they wouldn't eat the pork and then killed the mother. I forgot this. I forgot
the Maccabees.
The Maccabees. See, I need you for that one. But it's the same impulse. Come on, eat the pork. Come on, don't worry about it. I know you believe in that Jewish God. Eat the pork, don't worry, and I'll lavish all sorts of things on you. And they said, kill me. What are you talking about? He cut their skin off. He cut the skin off and he burned them. He burned the mother. In other words, and the brothers wouldn't give up. You understand that this is biblical, but those people are us. Those people, those brothers and that mother, they are us. We're called to that if the time comes. We have to shed our blood. And we started out this conversation talking about those who wear red and purple hats. Okay? They more so are obligated to shed their blood. I got to go out there and I got to take the risk, and you're my shepherd, and you're not going to take my back? I mean, come on. There's something wrong with that equation.
It was a good conversation.
Any final thoughts?
No, just keep up the fight. We're going to continue on no matter who becomes the president, but don't give up hope. Keep praying your rosary. It's a constant message that Joe and I always try to communicate to our listeners. Pray the rosary every day. That's what Our Lady of Fatima said. Pray it with your wife. Pray it with your children. And pray it because it's our weapon. The rosary is our weapon. Pray it every day. Change begins with us. It begins with the individual. First we have to change, and then we change our society. It begins with the sacramental life. It begins with praying the rosary. Start doing it today if you haven't. It's definitely an efficacious prayer, and it's definitely something that we should all be doing as Catholics.
Absolutely. So we want to thank you for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. As I said a couple times during this broadcast, please like our page. If you like us, like our page on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the little bell, share this video with your friends. We had a good audience today, about 160, 170 people watching. Last week, like I said, we got 40,000 views. We're going to get back to that level. Maybe if you share this video, we'll get back to that level tonight. But either way, we love you for coming and listening to us and chiming in the chat room and creating conversations there amongst yourselves. Like we always say, we can't get to every comment, but we're happy that you came here. We see a lot of new names in there today. So remember that you could follow us. Oh, you could please listen to us on the Crusade channel. You could sign up for a 30-day free trial subscription. Please remember that Joe and I receive nothing at all. No compensation whatsoever. We love being on the radio. We're talking to, what does he have, about a couple thousand people at least that are watching it, listening at any given time. So it's a great show. It's a great lineup. Mike Church in particular. So stroll on over there and sign up for the 30-day free trial subscription. And again, one more time, follow us on Facebook and YouTube. And thank you for joining us. And remember, until next week, 8 o'clock live on Sunday, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose once bright